My name is Zeke Hawking. I'm 70 years old, and 3 days ago, my son Danny handed me a can of dog food at my birthday party. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "This suits you better than sitting at our table." I built that table with my own hands, just like I built the house we were standing in, just like I built the construction company that paid for Danny's college education and his wedding. But what Danny didn't know, what nobody knew, was that I'd spent 50 years learning how to tear things down just as efficiently as I built them up. You know how a controlled demolition works? You place the charges carefully, wait for the perfect moment, then bring down the entire structure in seconds. What happened next wasn't revenge, it was precision engineering. This story has more explosive moments than a demolition site, and every single blast was calculated to the inch. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely, hit that subscribe button, because this is about to get very satisfying. And let me know in the comments what state you're listening from, because what I discovered happens everywhere. By the time I was done, my son's wife was in federal prison. Their criminal empire was in ruins, and the FBI called it the largest elder fraud case in California history. But I didn't know yet that the dog food was just their opening move. My name is Zeke Hawking, and at 70 years old, I thought I knew my family. I was wrong about everything. It was supposed to be my birthday party, October 15th, 3:30 p.m. sharp at 1247 Oakwood Drive. The house I built board by board, nail by nail. The same dining room where I'd eaten Christmas dinners for 3 decades. The same kitchen where I'd taught my son Danny how to use a level when he was 12. Danny walked in carrying a grocery bag. No happy birthday, Dad. No cake. Just that bag and a look on his face I'd never seen before. Cold, distant. His wife Flora followed behind him, wearing the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "We brought you something special," Flora said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Danny reached into the bag and pulled out a can of Alpo. Dog food. He set it down on my dining room table. The table I'd crafted from oak, I'd cut myself, with a deliberate thud. "This suits you better than eating with us," he said. I stared at that can. Blue and white label, beef and gravy flavor, the kind of thing you'd feed a stray animal you were trying to get rid of. "I don't understand," I said. Flora laughed. It was the sound of broken glass. "Oh, Zeke, you understand perfectly. This house is wasted on you. These rooms are wasted on you. You're just taking up space." My son, my only son, nodded along like a puppet. "We've made some changes," Danny said. "Legal changes. You'll be more comfortable somewhere, smaller." I looked around the room I'd planned, designed, and built. Every corner held a memory. The window where Danny used to watch for the school bus, the mantel where I'd hung his high school graduation photo, the hardwood floors I'd sanded 3 times to get perfect. "This is my house," I said quietly. "Not anymore," Flora replied. "Check your mail." That's when I noticed the stack of papers on the kitchen counter, official-looking documents with county seals. My name typed in neat rows, but the signatures, something was wrong with the signatures. Danny picked up the dog food can and pressed it into my hands. The metal was cold against my palms. "You've got 30 days to find somewhere else," he said. "Flora's being generous with the timeline." They turned to leave, just like that. No explanation, no goodbye. Flora paused at the door. "Oh, and Zeke, don't make this harder than it needs to be. At your age, stress can be dangerous." The door closed with a click that echoed through my empty house, but I didn't know yet that losing my home was just the beginning. I sat in that dining room for 2 hours after they left, turning that dog food can in my hands like it might explain everything. The silence felt heavier than the hammers I'd swung for 40 years. See, I built more than just this house. I built Hawking Construction from nothing. Started in 1975 with a borrowed truck and a toolbox my father left me. By 1985, we were building half the residential developments in this county. Shopping centers, office buildings, the elementary school where Danny learned to read. I thought I'd raised him right. Taught him the value of hard work, honest dealing, keeping your word. When he graduated college with a business degree, I was proud. When he married Flora 3 years ago, I welcomed her like the daughter I never had. When business started slowing down and I decided to retire, I thought passing the house to Danny someday was the natural thing to do. Natural. That's the word that haunts me now. I'd never been the suspicious type. Never checked up on Danny's finances or asked too many questions about Flora's background. She said she was from Arizona, family in import-export business. Seemed reasonable. She was beautiful, charming, and she made my son happy. That was enough for me. But sitting there with that dog food can, I started remembering things that hadn't made sense at the time. The way Flora always answered questions about her family with perfect rehearsed responses. How she'd steered conversations away whenever I asked about her previous relationships. The basement renovations they'd insisted on doing without my help. Just Danny and some guys Flora knew. The mail that had started disappearing. The new locks they'd installed while I was visiting my sister in Nevada last month. And Danny. My Danny. He'd lost weight. Dark circles under his eyes. Jumped every time his phone rang. I'd asked if everything was okay, but he'd always said, work stress, money pressure, normal married life stuff. I picked up those legal papers. The letterhead said County Recorder's Office. The document was a quitclaim deed dated June 15th, 3 months ago. My signature was there, transferring full ownership of 1247 Oakwood Drive to Daniel Marcus Hawking and Flora Valdez Hawking. Except I'd never signed anything like that. I'd built houses for 50 years. I knew what my signature looked like. This wasn't even close. The Z in Zeke was wrong. The way the H connected to the A in Hawking was completely different from how I'd signed documents my entire life. Someone had forged my name in my own house, at my own birthday party. My son had handed me dog food and told me I was homeless and the paperwork was fake. I called my lawyer immediately. Patricia Coleman had handled my business documents for 15 years. If anyone could explain this, she could. Patricia, it's Zeke Hawking. I need you to pull the title records on my house. Something's wrong. Zeke? What kind of wrong? Someone filed a quitclaim deed with my signature, except I never signed it. There was a pause. The kind of pause that makes your stomach drop. I'll call the county recorder's office right now. Can you come in tomorrow morning? I'll be there at 8. After I hung up, I walked through my house. Every room, every corner I'd measured and cut and fitted. The guest bedroom where Danny used to build Lego cities. The master bathroom where I'd installed heated floors for my late wife Sarah before she passed. The kitchen window that looked out over the garden where I still grew tomatoes every summer. In the basement, I noticed things I'd missed before. New drywall in corners that didn't need repair. Fresh paint over perfectly good walls. Strange electrical work that didn't match anything I'd ever done. And sounds barely audible humming like electronics running behind the walls. I climbed the stairs slowly. My knees weren't what they used to be, but my mind was crystal clear. Someone had stolen my house using fake documents. That someone was either my son or his wife, or both. And they'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. I made myself a simple dinner, sandwich and coffee, and sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad. Started writing down everything I could remember about the last year, every strange conversation, every time Danny had asked about paperwork or estate planning, every time Flora had mentioned how much space I didn't really need. The pattern was there. I'd just been too trusting to see it. As I wrote, I remembered Flora asking detailed questions about my finances, where I banked, whether I used online banking, my social security number for insurance purposes, Danny asking if I'd ever considered simplifying my accounts, consolidating everything in one place for easier management. I'd answered everything. Why wouldn't I? These were my family. By midnight, I had 3 pages of notes. By morning, I'd have answers. But what I found in that mail the next day would change everything I thought I knew about my son, my daughter-in-law, and the life I'd built. Patricia Coleman's office smelled like coffee and old law books. She'd been practicing elder law for 25 years, and her expression told me she'd seen this before. Zeke, I pulled the records. She spread 3 documents across her desk. The quitclaim deed was filed June 15th at 2:47 p.m. The signature looks authentic to the county clerk, but you're right to be suspicious. I leaned forward. How's that possible? Professional forgery isn't difficult if someone has access to multiple samples of your signature. Bank documents, contracts, tax returns. Someone who lives in your house would have plenty of opportunities. The weight of those words settled on me like cement. Someone who lives in your house. There's more, Patricia continued. This type of deed transfer, it's called a quitclaim. Essentially, it means the grantor gives up all claim to the property without any warranties. It's the easiest type of property transfer to forge because it doesn't require extensive documentation. So what can we do? We file a complaint for fraud and forgery, but Zeke, she paused, choosing her words carefully. The burden of proof is on us. We have to prove you didn't sign this. That's not always easy, especially when family members are involved. I pulled out my legal pad from the night before. I've been thinking about this all night. There are things that don't add up, questions I should have asked months ago. Patricia opened a fresh file folder. Tell me everything. I started with the basement renovations, how Danny had insisted on handling them personally, with workers I'd never met. How they'd asked me to stay upstairs during the day and visit my sister for a week while they finished the electrical work. Did you see permits for this electrical work? They said they'd handle it. Danny knows I trust him with administrative stuff. Wrong answer. I could see it in Patricia's eyes. What about financial documents? Have you checked your credit report recently? My credit report? Why would I need to check that? She handed me a form, Credit Monitoring Authorization. If someone forged your signature on property documents, they might have forged it on other things. Loans, credit cards, bank accounts. The room felt smaller suddenly. You think they've been stealing my identity? I think we need to find out exactly what your son and daughter-in-law have been doing with your personal information. I signed the authorization with a hand that trembled slightly, not from age, from anger. Patricia made 3 phone calls while I sat there. Experian, Equifax, TransUnion. Each conversation was brief, professional, and ended with her writing numbers on a notepad. After the last call, she looked at me with an expression I'd never seen from her before. Something between pity and rage. Zeke, we need to talk about identity theft protection, and we need to talk about it right now. How bad is it? She turned the notepad toward me. 12 credit cards opened in your name over the past 8 months. Total debt, $340,000. None of these accounts have your address. They're all routed to a P.O. box in Riverside County. The number hit me like a sledgehammer. $340,000. That's not possible. There's more. Bank transfers from your checking account. Wire transfers to accounts in Arizona. Your name appears on 47 financial transactions in the past 6 months that you've never authorized. I stared at those numbers. 47 transactions, each one a violation, each one proof that my family had been systematically destroying my life while I cooked them dinner and asked about their day. Patricia, I need you to understand something. I've never applied for a credit card in my life except the one I use for gas. I've never wired money to Arizona. I've never opened a P.O. box anywhere. I believe you, but the banks don't know that yet. Legally, you're responsible for this debt until we prove otherwise. How long will that take? Months, maybe longer. And Zeke? She closed the file folder. This level of identity theft doesn't happen randomly. Whoever did this had access to your social security card, your birth certificate, your bank statements. This was planned, systematic, and sophisticated. I thought about Danny asking for my social security number for insurance purposes, Flora's questions about my banking habits, the mail that had started disappearing, family members, the people I trusted most in the world. And that wasn't even the worst part I was about to discover. I drove home from Patricia's office in a daze. $340,000 in fraudulent debt, 47 unauthorized transactions, my name on documents I'd never seen. The house I'd built with my own hands was legally owned by people who just handed me dog food for my birthday. But when I pulled into my driveway, former driveway, I noticed a car I didn't recognize. A black Honda Accord with Arizona license plates parked next to Danny's truck. I sat in my car for a moment, watching my house. My house that wasn't my house anymore, apparently. Through the kitchen window, I could see figures moving around. More than just Danny and Flora. I needed help, real help. I called James Mitchell. We'd served together in Vietnam, and he'd become a private investigator after 20 years with the FBI. If anyone could make sense of this mess, it was Jim. Jim, it's Zeke Hawking. I need your professional services. Zeke, what's going on? Someone's been stealing my identity, forged my signature to steal my house, and I think it's my son and his wife. Jesus, are you somewhere safe right now? I looked at my house, their house, with the strange car in the driveway. I don't know anymore. Meet me at Denny's on 5th Street, 20 minutes. Don't go inside that house. James Mitchell looked exactly like what he was, a man who'd spent his career catching liars. Gray hair, steady eyes, and the kind of presence that made people tell the truth whether they wanted to or not. I spread Patricia's documents across the Denny's table. Credit reports, bank statements, wire transfer records, the paper trail of my stolen life. Jim studied everything for 10 minutes without saying a word. Finally, he looked up. Zeke, this isn't random identity theft. This is a coordinated financial crime, professional level. How well do you know your daughter-in-law? Flora? I thought I knew her pretty well. Danny met her 2 years ago. They married last year. She said she was from Arizona, family in import-export. Import-export, Jim made a note. That's what people say when they don't want to explain their business. What's her maiden name? Valdez. Jim pulled out his laptop and started typing. Flora Valdez, Arizona. Let me see what comes up. His fingers moved across the keyboard for several minutes. Then his expression changed. Zeke, we have a problem. A big problem. He turned the screen toward me. It was a police report from Phoenix, Arizona. A woman named Flora Elena Valdez, 38 years old, wanted on charges of elder fraud and identity theft. 3 victims, all men over 65, total damages, $1.2 million. The photo looked exactly like my daughter-in-law. There's more, Jim said, scrolling down. She's been married 3 times before Danny. All 3 husbands were elderly men with significant assets. 2 died under suspicious circumstances. The 3rd one disappeared entirely. I felt the coffee turn to acid in my stomach. Disappeared? Richard Ashford, 71 years old, married Flora in 2019. 6 months later, he vanished. His house was sold, his accounts were emptied, and Flora moved on. Phoenix PD has an open missing persons case. I stared at that police report, at the photograph that looked exactly like the woman who'd been living in my house, eating at my table, calling me dad for the past 2 years. Jim, if this is true, if this is really true, what does that mean for Danny? It means your son is either a willing accomplice or another victim. Based on what you're describing, the weight loss, the nervousness, I'd guess victim. She's probably got some kind of leverage over him. Leverage? Blackmail. Threats. Maybe both. Jim closed the laptop. Zeke, I need you to understand something. If Flora Valdez is running a long-term identity theft operation out of your house, this goes way beyond stealing your credit cards. This is federal crime territory. Money laundering, wire fraud, maybe worse. Worse how? The missing husband, the suspicious deaths. If Flora's been escalating her crimes, you could be in physical danger. I thought about Flora's parting words. At your age, stress can be dangerous. What do we do? First, we document everything. I'm going to run complete background checks on both Danny and Flora. Second, we contact the FBI's white-collar crime division. Third, we get you somewhere safe while we figure out exactly what we're dealing with. I'm not running from my own house. Zeke, listen to me. If Flora killed her previous husband, you're not just fighting for your house. You're fighting for your life. Jim gathered up the papers. I'm going to make some calls. You're going to get a hotel room for the next few days. Don't tell Danny or Flora where you're staying. Don't answer their calls. Don't go back to that house. As we walked to our cars, Jim put his hand on my shoulder. Zeke, there's something else. That car with Arizona plates? I ran the license while we were talking. It's registered to Miguel Valdez, Flora's brother. And Miguel has a criminal record: drug trafficking, money laundering, assault with a deadly weapon. I looked back toward my house, their house, where Miguel Valdez was probably sitting in my living room, planning God knows what. But I didn't know yet that the basement renovations had nothing to do with electrical work. I spent that night at a Holiday Inn, staring at the ceiling and thinking about the last 2 years. Every conversation with Flora, every time Danny seemed nervous or distracted, every red flag I'd ignored because I wanted to believe in family. Jim called at 6 a.m. "I've got preliminary results on the background checks. We need to meet, now." We met at a different Denny's this time. Jim had a manila folder thick with papers. "Flora Elena Valdez," he began, "has been using multiple identities across 4 states. In Arizona, she was Flora Mendoza. In Nevada, Flora Santos. In California, Flora Rodriguez. Each time, she targets elderly men with significant assets." He spread out a series of photographs. Different driver's licenses, all with Flora's face but different names. The pattern is always the same. She meets a vulnerable widower, usually through church or community groups. Whirlwind romance. Marriage within 6 to 18 months. Then the financial manipulation begins. Identity theft, property transfers, asset liquidation. "What about the missing husband? Richard Ashford?" "Still missing, but I found something interesting." Jim pulled out a bank statement. 3 days before Richard disappeared, someone transferred $450,000 from his accounts to a shell company in Arizona. The same shell company that received $127,000 from your accounts over the past 6 months. The number hit me like a physical blow. $127,000. From my accounts. Money I'd saved over 50 years of construction work. How is that possible? I never authorized any transfers. Online banking. With your social security number, birth date, and mother's maiden name, Flora could have set up online access to your accounts. The transfers were small enough to avoid automatic fraud alerts. $3,000 here, $5,000 there, spread out over months. I thought about Flora's innocent questions about my banking habits, whether I ever checked my statements online, why I preferred paper statements when digital was so much more convenient. "Jim, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Is my son part of this?" Jim was quiet for a long moment. "I think Danny is a victim, but he's also legally an accomplice. The house transfer required his signature too, and that signature appears to be genuine. He's in deep trouble either way." "What kind of trouble?" "Federal conspiracy charges, wire fraud, identity theft. Even if Flora manipulated him into it, he's still criminally liable." I closed my eyes. My son, my only child, facing federal prison because he'd married a sociopath. "There's more," Jim continued. "Miguel Valdez isn't just Flora's brother. He's a mid-level operator in a drug trafficking network that runs from Mexico through Arizona into California. The DEA has been watching him for 2 years. Drugs? What does that have to do with identity theft? Money laundering. Drug operations need ways to clean cash and move money without detection. Identity theft provides fake accounts, fake names, fake addresses. Your house isn't just a place Flora stole. It's probably an operational base. I remembered the basement renovations, the electrical work that didn't make sense, the strange humming sounds behind the walls. "Jim, we need to get into that house. I need to see what they've done to my basement." "Absolutely not. If there's a drug operation running out of your house, it's under surveillance. DEA, local police, maybe FBI. You go near that place, and you'll be arrested as an accomplice." "Then what do we do?" Jim pulled out his phone. "We cooperate with law enforcement. I've got contacts at the FBI's Sacramento field office. We take everything we found to them and let them build a federal case." "How long will that take?" "Months, maybe longer. But Zeke, there's something you need to understand. If we do this right, you're not just getting your house back. You're helping take down a multi-state criminal organization." I stared at the photographs of Flora's fake IDs. 4 different states, multiple identities, missing husbands, and my son caught in the middle of it all. What about Danny? If he cooperates, if he testifies against Flora and Miguel, what happens to him? Federal prison. Probably 2 to 5 years if he cooperates fully. 10 to 15 if he doesn't. 2 to 5 years. My son would be almost 50 when he got out. His life destroyed because he'd fallen in love with a criminal. Jim, I want you to arrange a meeting with the FBI, but first, I want you to do something else. What's that? I want you to set up surveillance on my house. Professional surveillance. I want to know exactly what's happening in there before we involve the federal government. Zeke, that's dangerous. No. What's dangerous is letting Flora and Miguel think they've won. What's dangerous is letting them continue using my house for whatever the hell they're doing. What's dangerous is giving them time to destroy evidence or hurt my son. Jim studied my face. You're not going to just hand this over to the FBI, are you? I'm going to fight for my house, my son, and my life, in that order. But I'm going to do it smart. All right, I can set up basic surveillance, cameras, electronic monitoring, financial tracking. But we do this by the book, Zeke. Everything admissible in court. Everything clean. Agreed. Jim gathered up the papers. One more thing. The $340,000 in fraudulent debt? With what we've found, the banks will have to eat those losses. But it'll take time to clear your credit. I don't care about credit. I care about justice. As we left the restaurant, Jim caught my arm. Zeke, just so we're clear, once we start this process, there's no going back. Your relationship with Danny will never be the same. Your family will be destroyed. I thought about my son handing me dog food. My house was stolen with forged signatures. My life savings were drained by criminals who called me dad. Jim, my family was destroyed the day Danny married Flora Valdez. We're just fighting to save what's left, but I had no idea that what we were about to discover would make everything else look like petty theft. Jim's surveillance equipment was more sophisticated than I'd expected. Cameras, listening devices, financial monitoring software. We spent 3 days gathering intelligence on my own house. The results were worse than I'd imagined. At 8:15 p.m. on Thursday, I decided it was time for a direct confrontation. I drove to my house, their house, and walked through the front door like I still lived there. Danny was in the kitchen, looking worse than I'd ever seen him. Hollow cheeks, shaking hand, the appearance of a man who hadn't slept in weeks. Flora was at the kitchen table with a laptop and 3 cell phones. When she saw me, her expression shifted from surprise to cold calculation. Zeke, she said, I thought we made it clear you weren't welcome here anymore. This is still my house until a judge says otherwise. Danny looked up from his coffee. Dad, you shouldn't be here. It's complicated. Complicated? Danny, let me tell you what's complicated. Having 12 credit cards opened in my name, having $340,000 in debt I never authorized, having my house stolen with a forged signature. Flora's eyes narrowed. Those are serious accusations, Zeke. They're facts. I've got documentation. Danny set down his coffee cup with trembling hands. Dad, I can explain. Shut up, Flora snapped. Then to me, Zeke, you're old. You're confused. You probably signed those documents and forgot. It happens to men your age. Don't old man me, Flora. Or should I call you by one of your other names? Flora Mendoza? Flora Santos? Flora Rodriguez? For the first time since I'd known her, Flora looked genuinely surprised. I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out one of Jim's police reports and set it on the table. The Phoenix PD missing persons report for Richard Ashford. Your third husband, Flora, the one who disappeared after you emptied his accounts. Phoenix PD is very interested in talking to you. Danny stood up abruptly. What the hell is this about? Flora's composure cracked slightly. Danny, don't listen to him. He's trying to turn you against me. Turn him against you? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Flora, you've been using my son to steal my identity and launder drug money through my house. I think you've done that yourself. Danny's face went white. Drug money? What are you talking about? Flora stood up, and for a moment I saw something in her eyes that made my blood freeze. Pure, calculating malice. Zeke, you have no idea who you're dealing with. Actually, I do. I know about Miguel. I know about the Arizona operation. I know about the missing husband and the suspicious deaths. She walked toward me slowly. You know, at your age, stress can be very dangerous. Heart attacks, strokes, Falls down basement stairs. Accidents happen all the time to stubborn old men. Flora, stop, Danny said, his voice cracking. No, Danny, your father needs to understand reality. She was close enough now that I could smell her perfume. The same perfume that had been in my house for 2 years, while she systematically destroyed my life. Reality is this, Zeke. You signed those documents. You authorized those transfers. You gave us this house because you love your son and want him to be happy. And if you try to say otherwise, if you cause problems for me or my family, you'll find out just how dangerous stress can be for a 70-year-old man. I looked into her eyes and saw exactly what Richard Ashford must have seen before he disappeared. Are you threatening me in my own house? This isn't your house anymore. And yes, I'm threatening you. Because you have 2 choices. Walk away quietly and live out whatever time you have left in some nice retirement home. Or keep fighting us and discover what happened to my previous husbands. Danny stepped between us. Flora, what the hell are you saying? She turned to him with that same cold smile. I'm saying your father's sick, Danny. Delusional. Making up stories about forged signatures and stolen identities. It's sad, really, but we can't let his mental illness destroy our life together. Danny, I said quietly, look at me. Look at your father. Do I seem mentally ill to you? My son looked back and forth between Flora and me. I could see the war happening behind his eyes. Love for his wife against a lifetime of trust in his father. I don't know anymore. Flora put her hand on Danny's shoulder possessively. Of course you don't know, baby. Your father is very convincing. That's how dementia works. They create elaborate fantasies that seem real to them. I'm not delusional, Danny. I have proof. Bank records, credit reports, police reports from Arizona about your wife's previous husbands. Stop calling her my wife, Danny snapped suddenly. Flora and I both stared at him. What did you say? Flora asked. Danny's hands were shaking worse now. I said stop calling her my wife, because she's not. Is she, Flora? We never actually got married, did we? Flora's perfect composure finally cracked completely. Danny, what are you talking about? The marriage certificate. I found it in your purse last week. The marriage certificate with Richard Ashford's name still on it. The one you never filed new paperwork for because Richard Ashford isn't actually dead, is he? He's still your legal husband. The room went completely silent. Flora stared at Danny with an expression of pure fury. You went through my purse? I went through your purse because my father raised me to pay attention when things don't add up, and nothing about you has ever added up. Flora said one sentence that made my blood freeze solid. Miguel is going to be very unhappy about this conversation. The silence that followed Flora's words lasted maybe 5 seconds. But in those 5 seconds, I realized that everything I thought I knew about my situation had been wrong. This wasn't just identity theft or even a sophisticated financial scam. This was life and death. Danny sat down heavily at the kitchen table. His hands weren't just shaking now, they were trembling like a man with advanced Parkinson's. Danny, I said carefully, who is Miguel? Flora answered before my son could speak. Miguel is my business partner, and Miguel doesn't like complications. What kind of business? She laughed, and this time there was genuine amusement in it. Oh, Zeke, you built this beautiful house with such a perfect basement. High ceilings, solid foundation, separate electrical system. It's ideal for our needs. What needs? Danny looked up at me with eyes that held more pain than I'd ever seen. Dad, you need to leave, right now, and you need to stay away. I'm not leaving without you. You don't understand. Danny's voice broke. Miguel has photographs of Sarah and the kids. My kids, Dad. Their school schedule, their soccer practice times, where they get ice cream on Fridays. Sarah? Danny's ex-wife. My grandchildren. Emma, 9 years old, and Michael, 7. The lights of my life. What are you saying? Flora sat back down at the table, suddenly relaxed. I'm saying your son understands consequences, Zeke. Unlike you. Danny buried his face in his hands. Flora showed me the photos 3 months ago. Miguel's people watching Emma at her ballet recital. Michael playing soccer. They know where the kids live, where they go to school, what time Sarah picks them up from daycare. And you signed the house transfer to protect them. I signed everything she asked me to sign. The house, the credit cards, the bank transfers, everything. Danny, why didn't you come to me? Why didn't you tell me what was happening? Flora answered again. Because Miguel told him what happened to the last person who tried to go to the authorities. Would you like to see those photographs too, Zeke? I looked at this woman who'd been living in my house for 2 years, eating my food, calling me dad, sleeping in the bedroom next to mine. How long have you been planning this? Planning what? The identity theft? About 6 months, but the rest of it, she gestured around the kitchen. The rest of it started the day I met your son. Do you know how easy it was to research your family, Zeke? Public records, social media posts, Danny's divorce papers, your construction company's financial records. You targeted my son. I targeted your assets. Danny was just the most efficient access point. And the basement? For the first time, Danny spoke up. Dad, don't go down there. Please, just don't. But I was already moving toward the basement stairs. I'd built those stairs with my own hands. I'd planned every inch of that basement as a workshop where I could spend my retirement building furniture for my grandchildren. Flora called after me. Zeke, I really wouldn't recommend that. I opened the basement door and started down the stairs. What I found there destroyed every assumption I'd made about the scope of this operation. The basement I'd built had been completely transformed. Professional electrical work, not the amateur job I'd assumed from the sounds upstairs. Industrial ventilation systems, security cameras in every corner, tables with digital scales, heat sealing equipment, and stacks, dozens of stacks, of vacuum-sealed packages filled with white powder. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the money counting machines. 6 of them, running simultaneously, processing cash in denominations I'd never seen in one place. Tens of thousands of dollars, maybe hundreds of thousands, being counted and sorted and bundled for transport. And surveillance monitors showing real-time feeds from cameras I didn't recognize. Cameras positioned around the elementary school where my grandchildren went to class. I climbed the stairs slowly. Each step felt like lifting concrete blocks. Flora was waiting at the top. Now you understand. You're not just laundering money through my identity. You're running a drug distribution center out of my basement. Your basement is perfectly positioned. Suburban neighborhood, no suspicious traffic, established electrical infrastructure. Your construction background gave us the perfect cover story for renovations. I looked at Danny. How long has this been going on? 4 months? Since May. And you've been living above a drug operation this entire time? Danny nodded miserably. Flora said it was temporary, just until they could establish operations somewhere else. But every time I ask when it's going to end, Miguel sends more photos of the kids. Flora checked one of her phones. Speaking of Miguel, he's on his way over. He's very interested in meeting you, Zeke. Why? Because our operation has been completely clean for 4 months. No law enforcement attention, no suspicious activity, no complications. Until today, when you started asking questions and making phone calls. What phone calls? Danny looked at me with horrified realization. Dad, please tell me you haven't been investigating this. I thought about James Mitchell, about Patricia Coleman, about the background checks and surveillance equipment. Flora saw the answer in my face. Oh, Zeke, you've made a terrible mistake. What kind of mistake? She stood up and walked to the kitchen window, looking out at the driveway. Miguel is here. A black SUV with tinted windows was pulling into my driveway. Arizona plates. 2 men got out. One I recognized as Miguel from Jim's surveillance photos. The other was someone I'd never seen, but everything about his posture screamed professional violence. Flora opened the front door before they could knock. Miguel, we have a problem? Miguel Valdez looked exactly like what he was, a man who solved problems with extreme prejudice. He was shorter than I'd expected, but carried himself with the kind of confidence that comes from never backing down from anything. Zeke Hawking, he said, walking into my living room like he owned it. I've been looking forward to meeting you. This is my house, Miguel smiled. It was the kind of smile that doesn't involve any warmth. No, Mr. Hawking, this is my distribution center. You're just the previous owner. The second man closed the front door and stood in front of it. Miguel continued. Flora tells me you've been making inquiries, asking questions, causing complications. I've been trying to understand why my family stole my house. Your family didn't steal anything. They made a business arrangement. Unfortunately, you've become a liability to that arrangement. I realized I wasn't just fighting for my house anymore. I was fighting for my life. Miguel walked through my living room like he was inspecting property he already owned, which I realized he probably thought he did. Mr. Hawking, let me explain something to you. My organization has invested significant resources in this location: equipment, personnel, time. We've established relationships with suppliers and customers who expect reliability. This is my house. This was your house. Now it's our asset. And assets that become liabilities get liquidated. Danny stood up from the kitchen table. Miguel, you said if I cooperated, if I signed everything, my family would be safe. Your family is safe, Danny, as long as there are no complications. Miguel looked directly at me. But complications have a way of spreading. I thought about James Mitchell, probably monitoring this conversation through the surveillance equipment we'd installed, about the FBI contacts he'd mentioned, about the evidence we'd already gathered. What do you want from me? Miguel sat down in my recliner, the chair I'd bought to watch baseball games in my retirement. I want you to disappear, Mr. Hawking, quietly, permanently. You're going to drive to Mexico tonight. You're going to have an accident somewhere in the desert. Very sad. Elderly man, confused about directions, car trouble in the heat. And if I refuse? Then Emma and Michael have an accident too. School bus accidents are tragically common. The blood drained from Danny's face. Miguel, you promised? I promised their safety in exchange for cooperation. Your father's interference violates that agreement. I looked at Miguel Valdez and made a decision that would either save my family or get us all killed. I'll make you a counteroffer. Miguel raised an eyebrow. Counteroffer? I'll disappear. Tonight. Mexico, desert, accident, whatever story you need. But first, I want to make sure you understand exactly what you've gotten yourself into. I understand perfectly. No, you don't. I pulled out my phone. You think you're dealing with a confused old man and his frightened son. You're not. I pressed a button on my phone. James Mitchell's voice came through the speaker, crystal clear. Zeke, we've got everything. Audio, video, financial records. FBI is en route. Miguel was on his feet instantly, reaching inside his jacket. I wouldn't. Jim's voice continued through the phone. You're surrounded. Federal agents, local police, DEA. This house has been under surveillance for 3 days. The second man moved toward me, but stopped when red laser dots appeared on his chest and Miguel's. Sniper rifles, Jim explained helpfully. Former military, very professional. They don't miss. Miguel's hand was still inside his jacket. This is a bluff. Check your phones, I said. All of them. Your personal phone, Flora's phones, the business phones you think are encrypted. Flora grabbed her 3 phones from the kitchen table. All of them showed no service. Cell jamming, Jim's voice continued. Your communications have been compromised for the past 72 hours. Every call, every text, every contact with your network has been monitored and recorded. Miguel's composure finally cracked. You're a dead man, Hawking. Maybe, but you're a federal prisoner. Wire fraud, money laundering, drug trafficking, conspiracy, terroristic threats against children. That's life in prison without parole. FBI? Search warrant! The front door exploded inward. Federal agents in tactical gear flooded my living room. Miguel and his partner hit the floor with their hands behind their heads before the agents could even finish shouting commands. Flora tried to run toward the back door, but more agents were already there. Danny sat at the kitchen table with his head in his hand, crying. Daniel Hawking, one of the agents said, approaching with handcuffs. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Wait, I called out. He's cooperating. He's been working with us for the past week. The agent looked at me, then at Danny. Is that true, Mr. Hawking? Danny nodded without lifting his head. I've been recording conversations with Flora and Miguel for 6 days. Everything's on my phone. The agent holstered his handcuffs. We'll need you to come in for debriefing. James Mitchell appeared at my side. Zeke, you did good. Better than good. What about my grandchildren? Are they safe? Protective custody since yesterday. They think they're on a special camping trip with federal marshals. I watched Flora and Miguel being led away in handcuffs. My house again, filled with federal agents processing evidence. But the biggest evidence was still in my basement, and what they found there would shock even the FBI. The FBI's basement inventory took 6 hours, 890,000 in cash, 47 kilograms of uncut cocaine, 12 kilograms of heroin, digital scales, vacuum sealers, and heat pressing equipment for preparing distribution packages, money counting machines that had processed an estimated $3.2 million over 4 months, and computers. Dozens of computers running sophisticated financial software for laundering drug proceeds through stolen identities. Agent Sarah Walsh, the lead investigator, found me sitting on my front porch at midnight, watching the last of the evidence bags being loaded into federal vehicles. Mr. Hawking, we're going to need your house as a crime scene for at least another week. Take all the time you need. Your son's cooperation has been extraordinary. The recordings he made, the financial documents he photographed, the intelligence he gathered on Miguel's operation, it's enough to take down their entire network. I looked through my living room window, where Danny was giving a statement to federal prosecutors. Agent Walsh, what's going to happen to my son? Honestly, with his level of cooperation and the evidence of coercion, probably probation and community service, maybe house arrest. The federal prosecutor is recommending minimal jail time. And Flora? Flora's looking at 25 to life, and that's before Arizona adds their charges. Arizona? Agent Walsh sat down beside me on the porch steps. We contacted Phoenix PD about Richard Ashford. They're reopening the investigation as a homicide. Flora's DNA was found in Richard's car, and financial records show she accessed his accounts after the supposed disappearance date. So he's really dead. We think so, and we think there are others. Flora's been operating this identity theft scheme for at least 10 years across multiple states. The FBI's white-collar crime division is coordinating with law enforcement in Nevada, Arizona, California, and New Mexico. How many victims? Potentially dozens. You're lucky, Mr. Hawking. You're the first one who fought back successfully. I had help. You had something else. You had a son who loved you enough to risk his life gathering evidence. Through the window, I could see Danny talking to the prosecutors. He'd lost 30 pounds and looked 10 years older than when this started. But for the first time in months, his hands weren't shaking. Agent Walsh stood up. There's something else you should know. Miguel's organization wasn't just using your basement for local distribution. This was a major transportation hub, drugs coming up from Mexico, being processed and repackaged here, then distributed across Northern California. How big? Conservative estimate? This operation was moving $50 million worth of narcotics annually. Your house was one of the most significant drug seizures in California this year. I thought about my basement workshop, where I'd planned to build toy boxes and rocking chairs for Emma and Michael. Mr. Hawking, Miguel's attorney, is already talking about a plea deal. He wants to cooperate in exchange for avoiding the death penalty. Death penalty? The children, the photographs, the surveillance, the threats against Emma and Michael. Under federal law, that's attempted kidnapping and terrorist threats, capital charges. Will he cooperate? Miguel's looking at life without parole or execution. He'll cooperate. Danny emerged from the house, accompanied by a federal prosecutor. He looked exhausted but relieved. Dad, he said, walking over to where I sat. I'm sorry. I'm so goddamn sorry for everything. I stood up and hugged my son. For the first time in months, he felt solid in my arms instead of brittle and breakable. Danny, you saved us. You saved Emma and Michael. You saved me. I should have come to you immediately. The day Flora showed me those photographs, I should have called you. You were protecting your children. Any father would have done the same thing. Agent Walsh interrupted. Mr. Hawking, there's one more thing. We found wire transfer records showing that Flora and Miguel were planning to kill you within the week. Tonight's confrontation probably saved your life. Danny's face went white. Kill him? Your father had become too much of a liability. Flora was going to stage a home invasion, make it look like a robbery gone wrong. I realized I'd been much closer to death than I'd understood. Agent Walsh, Danny said, what about the house? The title transfer? Fraudulent documents. The county recorder will void the quitclaim deed within 30 days. Your father's property ownership will be fully restored. I looked at my house again, with federal crime scene tape across the front door. How long before I can move back in? 2 weeks for evidence processing. Then you'll need professional decontamination services for the basement. Drug residue, chemical contamination, probably another month. That's fine. I've got some rebuilding to do anyway. Danny looked at me. Dad, I understand if you never want to see me again. I understand if... Danny, shut up. He stopped talking. You're my son. You made some mistakes, but you also risked everything to protect your children and help bring these criminals to justice. We're going to rebuild our relationship the same way I'm going to rebuild that basement, from the foundation up. Agent Walsh handed me a business card. Mr. Hawking, the FBI's Victim Services Division will help with trauma counseling, financial recovery, and home restoration. Call that number tomorrow. As the last federal vehicle pulled out of my driveway, Danny and I sat on the porch looking at my house. But what Danny told me next changed everything I thought I knew about Flora's crimes. Danny and I sat on my porch until dawn, talking about the past 2 years, about Flora's manipulation techniques, about Miguel's threats, about the fear that had consumed my son's life since the day he'd realized what kind of woman he'd married. Dad, there's something else. Something I didn't tell the FBI. What? Danny pulled out his phone and scrolled through messages. 3 days ago, Flora got a call that scared her. Really scared her. More scared than I'd ever seen her. Scared how? It was from Arizona, Phoenix PD. They'd found something. He showed me a text message Flora had sent to Miguel. Phoenix found the car. We need to move operations immediately. Richard Ashford's car? That's what I thought. But it wasn't. Danny looked exhausted. I listened to Flora's phone calls after that. She was talking to lawyers, to people I'd never heard of. She kept mentioning something called the Riverside Job. What's the Riverside Job? I don't know. But whatever it is, it's bigger than anything we've seen. Flora was talking about victims, plural, and she was talking about federal charges that could mean death penalty. I called James Mitchell immediately. Jim, we need you back here. Danny's got information about other crimes. What kind of crimes? The kind that might involve federal death penalty charges. Jim arrived within an hour, accompanied by Agent Walsh and a federal prosecutor. Danny played the recorded phone conversations he'd captured on his phone. Flora's voice, clear and panicked, talking to unknown accomplices about evidence discovery in Phoenix. We need to access the Arizona storage unit immediately, Flora's voice said. Everything from Riverside needs to disappear. Agent Walsh looked grim. Mr. Hawking, we need you to understand that what you've uncovered might be part of a much larger criminal conspiracy. Larger how? The FBI has been investigating a series of missing persons cases across the Southwest. Elderly men, all with significant assets, all who disappeared after marrying younger women. We call it Operation Desert Rose. How many missing men? 12 confirmed, possibly more. Danny's face went pale. 12? Agent Walsh nodded. Your wife's phone records show contact with at least 8 other women operating similar schemes. This wasn't just identity theft, Mr. Hawking. This was a serial murder conspiracy. The prosecutor opened a laptop and showed us a map with red pins scattered across Arizona, Nevada, California, and New Mexico. Each pin represents a missing person case that matches Flora's methodology. Elderly widower, whirlwind romance, marriage, asset transfer, disappearance. And you think Flora killed them all? We think Flora and her network killed them systematically. Industrial-scale murder for financial gain. Danny buried his face in his hands. I was married to a serial killer. Agent Walsh looked at both of us. There's more. The storage unit in Riverside that Flora mentioned? We got a federal warrant 2 hours ago. What did you find? Personal effects from at least 6 victims. Driver's licenses, social security cards, credit cards, jewelry, everything needed to maintain their identities post-mortem. The prosecutor leaned forward. Mr. Hawking, your son's cooperation has given us the evidence we need to solve 12 murder cases and potentially save dozens of other potential victims. What happens now? Now the FBI arrests Flora's entire network across 4 states, the largest elder fraud and murder conspiracy case in federal history. James Mitchell looked at Danny. You realize what this means? Your recordings, your evidence, you've helped stop a serial killer. Danny nodded slowly. Will Emma and Michael be safe? Flora's organization is finished, Agent Walsh said. Your children will be completely safe. I looked at my son, who'd risked everything to gather evidence against the woman who destroyed our family. Danny, you're not just a victim in this. You're a hero. But the truth about Flora that would emerge over the next 6 months would shock even federal investigators. 6 months later, I was standing in my rebuilt basement. Not a drug operation this time, a workshop, real workshop, with tools for building furniture for Emma and Michael. The federal trials were over. Flora Valdez received life in prison without parole for 12 counts of first-degree murder. Miguel Valdez got life plus 50 years. Their network, 17 people across 4 states, all received federal prison sentences. Danny served 4 months in federal minimum security prison and 2 years of probation. Community service included speaking to law enforcement agencies about identifying elder fraud operations. My house was completely restored. The FBI's Victim Services Division paid for professional decontamination, new flooring, new electrical work, and a security system that would make Fort Knox jealous. But the most important restoration was my family. Danny moved into the guest bedroom while he rebuilt his life. Emma and Michael spent every weekend with us, learning to use tools and helping their grandfather build the toy boxes I dreamed about. Dad, Danny said, joining me in the basement workshop, Agent Walsh called. They found 3 more victims in Nevada. Flora's final victim count is 15 confirmed murders. How many people did we save by stopping her? The FBI estimates Flora's network was targeting 43 potential victims across the Southwest. All elderly, all wealthy, all vulnerable. I picked up a piece of oak I was shaping into a rocking horse for Michael. Danny, I need to tell you something. I'm proud of you. Dad, No, listen. You made a mistake falling for Flora. But when you realized what she really was, you risked your life and your children's lives to stop her. That takes courage I'm not sure I could have managed. You would have done the same thing. Maybe, but you actually did it. Danny sat down on my workbench. What do we do now? Now we live. We rebuilt. We make sure Emma and Michael grow up knowing they're safe and loved. And Flora? Flora spends the rest of her life in federal prison, knowing that the family she tried to destroy is stronger than ever. I picked up my phone and made a video. My name is Zeke Hawking. 6 months ago, my son handed me dog food at my birthday party and told me to find somewhere else to live. Today, we're building toy boxes together in the basement, where criminals used to count drug money. If you know an elderly person being isolated from family, being pressured to sign documents, or showing signs of financial manipulation, call the FBI. Don't wait. Act immediately. These criminals count on families staying silent. I posted the video on social media with the hashtag #ElderJustice. Danny, we're not just rebuilding our family, we're building something bigger. What's that? A mission. No other family should go through what we went through. Outside my workshop window, I could hear Emma and Michael playing in the garden where I grew tomatoes. The house I built with my hands was home again,